Good morning or good afternoon. It's Spirit Sessions of View of the Light, and we're here again this Sunday in the spooky month of October. And we have decided to spook you up again today. We have Gran Evans from the Ontario Paranormal Society with us this week, and he's going to talk about being a paranormal investigator, what it's all about. It's not about running into buildings and screaming, "Show me yourself, use chicken." But no, we won't talk about those guys. Anyways, Grant has a very respectful way of investigating the paranormal, and we've brought him here to talk about it today. Teresa's with us, and she's still having problems with her internet. So if anybody on Spirit Sessions family can talk to her about fixing your internet, can figure it out, give her a message, and maybe somebody can work it through with her that has that expertise. Unfortunately, I don't. So we're going to reach out to you guys because you guys are so resourceful. So we're going to ask for your help. Please share this show out, like it, check us out on YouTube, subscribe, and also check out our paranormal podcast, Spirit Sessions of View of the Light, later on today when we have it uploaded, so you can take it on the road with you. But without further ado, I'm going to introduce Grant Evans from the Ontario Paranormal Society. He's way down in southwestern Ontario, which is about, if you don't know how big Ontario is, think of Texas. And Ontario is about the size of Texas, and it would take me about 6 hours to drive to Grant from my house. So it's so nice we can just zoom over to him through StreamYard. I'm going to put Grant on the big. And Grant, would you give us a little background about yourself and how you became a paranormal investigator?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. Yes, I've been a paranormal investigator off and on for about 20 years. I got into it as a young teenager, curious into urban exploring, and we always loved the spooky Halloween season. So me and my friends would go into places and see if we could find anything, and of course have fun with each other and scare each other as well. So that kind of developed and increased into, we started getting paranormal experiences doing these adventures. So curiosity got the best of us, and I was raised in organized religion, so I kind of took that approach initially, and it kind of blossomed from there. Ended up having to take about a break for several years because things started getting too active in my personal space, and that kind of put me off. So I took a break so I could reevaluate things and re-educate myself, and I think that there's an event that caused that and wanted me to take that break so I could learn more before I got back in to help people. So I took that break and started my own team with a friend who was a police officer. He encouraged me to get back into it. So we were a team for about 3 years and had the luxury of working with Lorraine Warren when she was still with us on a case, and with the Ontario Paranormal Society because my direction has brought me here. So I'm a co-director with our other director. His name is Jen, and we've been running the group since about 2018. No, the last 2 years, 3 years, we've been directors of the team, and it's been very, very busy. So lots and lots of cases, and right now we're doing a lot of fundraisers for October for local museums and stuff. So it's quite the endeavor I've got myself into.
Do you find museums to be haunted spaces because of the objects, or because they're usually housed in old buildings? That's pretty interesting. Like, they're always kind of creepy, museums, when you walk in there. There's a lot of weird energy going on.
I find it could be both. We've had the one we just did 2 weekends ago was at a historical society in Brantford, and that building itself was owned by some historical people to the community. And we found that through those stories that the employees and the staff shared with us, it seemed more like it was the building owners as opposed to the artifacts that were still present in the building. So very, very fascinating. But yeah, you have that stone tape theory, like where spirits could be attached to an object, and maybe it's not, maybe it is. But when you're housing many, many in a museum, it's very hard unless you're getting clear, concise evidence pointing you towards one to suggest it is.
That's so. This week you said you just did an investigation. You do private investigation as well as like the Halloween fundraising type of investigations you do when you have a whole bunch of people tagging along. Do you find there's a difference when it's just your team and when you have like a huge group of interested people?
100%, yeah, for sure, it's different. Your objectives are different too. As a team, we know all that evidence we're going to capture during a tour is going to be contaminated. There's going to be people with rumbly stomachs. There's going to be people coughing. There's going to be people not standing still, or people whispering when you're trying to do EVP sessions. So it's incredibly hard to take the public tours from an evidence standpoint and say, yes, I've proved there's a spirit here on a tour. Those tours are more about educating the public, saying, look, we have access to all of these devices, just like you see on TV. We're very, very fortunate to have that as a team. And through doing these tours, that helps us pay for equipment, it helps us pay for batteries, gas, food. Our entire team's volunteer, so we do this on our own free time and work our normal jobs. So this is 100% non-profit. We're not making money at all on it. We're just hoping to help people. And
you're probably spending a lot of money, right? You're probably spending a lot of money. That equipment isn't cheap, right?
Yeah, so you compare that to a private investigation where your objectives are different. Like you're trying to validate their claims, you're trying to help them. They're in a moment of crisis. There's a lot more seriousness involved and a lot more of an investigative standpoint, where a lot of people, like you said, on the TV shows, they'll do those public locations, they get scared and then they run away. Well, in an investigation, something happens and then you're right away trying to prove what that was that happened. Was it someone walking on the floor? Was it the cat upstairs? Was it this? Was it that? So the approach is a lot more meticulous and a lot can be more strenuous too, because you're there for, our typical investigation would be like 7 p.m. till 2 or 3 a.m. It's a long, long night, and then driving home sometimes is several hours away. So the environment's completely different, I would say, doing private investigations to public places.
Here's a basic question that I've always wondered. Why at night, and why does everybody have to turn off all the electronic equipment, like all the lights? Why do they do? Is that just for dramatic effect, or is there real science behind the reason you do that?
I laugh because yes, there's most of the sensors that have been developed for paranormal investigations rely on lights, right? They rely on the triggering of a sensor. So like your standard K2 meter, there's 5 lights on the top. Well, if you're in daylight and that's on a camera, you might not see those lights trigger. Obviously at nighttime or darker, you're going to see those lights respond better, especially in film footage. That's one reason. Another reason is it kind of heightens your other perceptions when the idea of reducing your perceptions, like something like the Estes method, where you're wearing the goggles, your sound canceling headphones, and all you're hearing is your spirit box, that AM/FM radio sweep. You're entirely focused on that frequency or that sound. So when you remove those things, perhaps, or it's suggested that those senses are going to be more heightened. So in the dark, you can't rely on your sight as much. So you're relying more on your senses, like how you feel in a space, or what the temperature, perhaps, like your hearing. That's one. Or it's just straight up simple as it's more fun in the dark, because when these lights and sensors go off, it's more scary and entertaining, right? There's lots of approaches to it. The other one is that contamination, right? At nighttime, we do investigations because there's less people walking on the street, there's less traffic on the roads. We're not getting all those extra things that we have to rule out when we actually capture evidence. So
I mean,
you
and
don't have to do it
people,
in the dark.
what about the EMFs that like electricity throws off? I mean, um, that, I mean, you have some sensors that sense EMFs, right? And they go stronger around electrical. So if it's not running, does that change the dynamics or
It could if
different
some wiring's
baseline?
like not insulated, like if it's not insulated properly. But part of a good investigator is mapping out the location before you start an investigation too. So, as an example, you take your meters, you map out each room to see if there's anything that could give you that false positive. You treat it like a science experiment, kind of is how I tell people to do it. You want to know what the baseline is for that space. So when you're in there investigating, you get a response, then you can actually challenge that response to your baseline and say, okay, we know we shouldn't have an EMF spike of 20 in this space because we've already mapped it out. If you just go in there blind and get something, it's interesting, it's fascinating, but you don't have anything to challenge it against. So when you're taking that forward as strong evidence to present it to someone, it doesn't hold as much weight.
Now, Jessica from the Breakthrough Show Network, who we are all member of, just saying, was wondering if you've seen the 28 Days Haunted series on Netflix, and what's your opinion of the 28-day theory from Ed and Lorraine Warren?
So, like all things TV, people are paid for a product, right? If I go to a network and say, hey, I have a pitch, I have a haunted show, whatnot, they give me X amount of dollars per episode. A lot of people don't know the film background in television, but so if they give me $10,000 an episode to provide scary content, I go to a location and I don't find scary content, they're going to stop paying me, right? That makes sense. So when you watch those TV shows, you have to kind of be mindful of that some of these things might be doctored. As much as you might love some of these people when they say things, it's always something in the back of my mind as an investigator. But there's very genuine people in the industry. But watching television that's geared towards a certain market with a certain thing, sometimes that evidence is questionable. I really enjoyed that show, and I've been a long fan of Ed and Lorraine Warren. I worked with her on a case I did, and I saw her in
She's a
person.
real famous
Fantastic
medium,
woman.
yeah, very
Yeah.
famous medium.
So, and when I met her, 100% she was genuine. I had no thoughts that she might have been fraudulent at all. So when you watch a show like that 28 Days Later, that was the first time myself that I actually heard about that theory of they have to stay 28 days in a location to break the veil. So that piqued my interest because I had never heard that before in any of my readings about them. But Tony Spare, their nephew, I believe, who has assumed care of the haunted museum and all their artifacts and their tour and their legacy, I guess, has come out with that show. So interesting theories. I thought some of the moments throughout that show I questioned, but overall, I think it was interesting. I give it that, right? And in this field of paranormal research, the only way for us to get better, if you will, is for us to challenge these theories and try different things, right? And you hope that the responses are valid and honest, I guess. So
Yeah. Nancy Louise was saying, wondering about the 3 a.m. happy hour for spirit, isn't it? Do you find there's a certain time of the night that you get more activity than at other times?
there's a lot of 3 a.m. theories, I'd say. Like I personally, if I would say no. I'd say no. I don't get this commonality that most cases at 3 a.m. they pick up. Uh, if you basic spirit theory is that they're energy, right? Like basic like scientific theory, energy can't be created or destroyed. It has to go from one form to another. So when the human person dies, where does their energy go? Well, it has to go somewhere, right? And that's the basic of paranormal research, is that that person becomes some kind of energy. So sometimes we'll go into a location that's reportedly haunted. That spirit or energy is going to be at its peak sometimes right when we get there. So when we're interacting, sometimes we get the best responses as soon as we get there, and not like they're delaying till 3 a.m. to give you that response, if they're there or not, if it's intelligent or if it's um, like a residual haunting where it's just energy that's trapped. I wouldn't say it necessarily correlates to a certain time from my experience. But it also depends on what type of haunting you're dealing with. If you're dealing with something perhaps more ominous, that could be a factor, but usually not from what I've done over the last several years. So
Okay.
I'm not sure if you
Well,
guys have any experience with that yourselves, but
I think, yeah, it's for me. I can't remember when that ghost. It was in the middle of the night when the ghost touched me, but I actually did, and I think it was. I was asleep, so I can't tell you. Um, Jessica was just had a follow up. She says she understands about TV, and guess her question was less about the series and more about the theory, which was around before the series, about the 28-day theory. So she was wondering about that 28-day theory more than the series itself.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, like I said, I think that theory is very fascinating. I think it could hold some weight to it. We've only seen that one show about testing that theory, so I don't know how many times that theory's been tested outside of that as well, other than the TV show itself saying Ed and Lorraine would suggest that. I haven't read any of their cases that they've done that. Um, but I also can tell you that when we've done tours at certain locations, sometimes the more we do them, the more likely that we're going to get responses. Or we've been to one place in Kitchener, the Homer Watson Gallery, and Homer Watson was a very infamous Canadian celebrity artist, and had like he has one of his paintings in the now deceased Queen's personal collection in England. So he's a very prominent Canadian figure, and he held seances in his front lobby with like William King, our early prime minister. Like he has this huge history of spirituality. And the first few times we went there to do investigations or to do tours, we found we weren't really getting a lot of interactions. It's almost like things were avoiding us. But by like the fourth or fifth time we've been in there, like we're getting crazy interactions that we can explain. And it's so perhaps there is evidence to suggest the longer you're there, the more likely things are going to interact with you, or they might be more comfortable to interact with you. So I do like the theory, and one day I'd love to pursue it myself if that option came up. But
Yeah,
it's
that's
definitely very
interesting.
fascinating, and I think needs more evidence. So
Um, so have you lived? You said you may have lived in a haunted house when you were younger, or a house that definitely had a weird energy about it. Have you tell us about one of your most, I know, personal but most profound experiences that you've had lately or in the past? One that you can say that definitely wasn't my mind playing tricks on me, or it definitely wasn't car lights flashing in through the window, or somebody whispering in the background.
yeah, so it's when I was a teenager, for some reason, and there's parapsychology theories that suggest when you're going through puberty as a teenager or a near-death experience, parts of your brain are overactive or more active than they normally are, so their openness to these things a lot easier. Um, I remember there's 3 moments in my life so far. I hope that's it. Where I've experienced something so profound that I think those events are linked to changes in my life. Um, One of those, when I was getting those reoccurring nightmares, it was always, I would hear this strange kind of audible tone, almost like a Viking horn. It might sound silly, and it probably does, but you know what? That's my experience, and I love sharing it. So I hope you guys can relate to it. Heard this very strange audible tone, and it's something that I haven't heard anywhere else. I can't say like, yes, it's this instrument, it's that instrument, it's a foghorn, it's this. Like I can't put an instrument or a natural means to it. And I would always hear this tone, and then I knew that dream was starting in my dream, or that experience was happening. So as a child, I didn't really put anything to it, and um, as a late teenager, my one of my best friends, his house is 1,000% haunted. And we used to do things like Ouija board in the basement. We would do that paranormal urban exploration. Um, and at first I was like, I'm so religious. Like I'm gonna negate all of this bad juju. Like this can't happen around me because I'm so religious, right? And joke on me, right? That's not how the universe works. So we did a few things, and we had this rule where we would never, no one would be alone in the basement of the house because we were always terrified. And all these experiences, like I could name 1,000 experiences that we've had and I've had in that basement that I couldn't explain. And for some reason, I slept over one night, and back when Sega Genesis was new, I'm a little bit dating myself, but I was playing it in the basement, and my friend went up to have a shower, and I thought, it's it's okay. I'm safe down here. It's daytime. I don't need to be afraid, even though we have this rule. Oh, excuse me. And I was just playing a video game. Music was blaring in the background. Felt fine, and he was upstairs having a shower. Excuse me again. And I heard this really strange tone from behind my shoulder, and I knew I was the only one in there, and it didn't match the sounds of the game. It didn't match the sounds of anything in the space. So it caught my attention, and I looked over my shoulder, and he had a bar that this basement was dug out and like built by his grandfather. And one of the experiences was we'd hear the doors rattling on the bar, and we always would say, "Oh, his grandpa's come to visit. He's going to get a drink," kind of chuckle it off. So we had, I'm not sure if people down in the United States are aware or know about what a Tim Hortons, like a Timbit box is, or like a donut hole box. So it's a kind of rectangular cardboard box that has these angle latches on the sides, and that pushes. You have to push the lid down to open it, and you physically have to do it. So when I heard this vocal tone go off, it caught my attention, and I turned directly towards this bar where things would happen, and I saw the box get pushed down and open right in front of me, and it froze me so quick. I was so
Oh my
terrified. It was
God.
instantly chills, and I was just like, "Oh, okay, that's it, no more." Like you said hello, like that's all you can do. Just don't touch me or hurt me, and it terrified me in that moment. And uh, but it was almost like this strange hello moment where, like, yes, I do exist, and you're by yourself. Like I can say hello even when you're by yourself, and that terrified me in that moment. So, and then I was on a TV show, haunted hospitals, telling a story as a paramedic. The third time that I heard this noise was actually when I was working as a paramedic and dealing with an individual that had barricaded themselves in the house, just got released from a mental health watch from the hospital, and yeah, like I said, had barricaded themselves, and all of these things. I took many SWAT officers to go in to bring this person out, and she was maybe 100 pounds soaking wet. So this person that was alligator rolling on top of their shoulders was an incredible feat to see. And anyone in healthcare knows that mental states can mimic. They show things like extreme strength can be a side effect of like a schizophrenic or like a mental health break or acute psychosis. So in that moment, thinking, okay, this person's having a crisis, just do my job. I was tired. It was in the middle of a night shift. And to sum it up, this person was handcuffed behind their back and wrapped up in blankets and on my stretcher. And I was in the back by myself with this person and a police officer, because when they're apprehended, a police officer has to go with them. I'm not sure if American rules, but that's Canadian rules. And we unfortunately were in a snowstorm, which is also one of the funnest things to do while working as a paramedic, is to work in a snowstorm in the middle of the night. So we got stuck in the snow.
Yeah, because
So this
those
was just
babies
right in.
don't have 4-wheel drive, right?
No, they're just really heavy with big tires. So we got stuck in the snow, like right in front of the house, trying to start our way to the hospital. And the SWAT officers thought it'd be fun to just try and push me. So it's almost like a movie moment for me. I'm in the back. There's a patient that's stoic, just staring straight ahead on the stretcher. The whole ambulance is shaking back and forth because all the police officers are shaking it, trying to get unstuck. And the officer in the back with me was like, maybe I can help too. I'm like, okay, you're gonna leave me in the back by myself with this person? Good luck. But I felt safe enough. The person was secured, and she got out, starts pushing, and I turn down to start doing some documentation in my notebook, and I hear this noise that I've heard 2 times previously. So immediately it catches my attention, and when I look up, this person is sitting upright on my stretcher when they were laying down and had their handcuffs in front of them instead of behind them, and she was just turned sideways staring at me. So like I didn't hear any noises other than this very loud vocal tone, and only I could hear it. My partner was in the driver's seat, didn't hear it. Um, and yeah, so kind of wildness ensued from that. I ended up, obviously, that instinctual panic sets in. I resecured the patient, but in the process, she jumped, I'd say, at least 10 different personalities in that 1 minute it took for that police officer to come into the back. And it was quite the experience. And I want to say there's some kind of spiritual involvement, whether it be oppression, demonic oppression. I couldn't say possession, even though like that's the first thing people might think of, because there is this acute psychosis in the medical field. That's kind of the fallback where they don't have a diagnosis, then it's acute psychosis. But spirituality, you could easily say that's some kind of demonic or spiritual involvement, if you will. So yeah, that was the third time I heard that noise. So that was probably the most surreal moments in my life as an investigator. And the things that she said to me in those moments still stick with me, and um, definitely make me believe that all of those things are possible, even more than just TV and investigating. I think it's extremely rare um, that these things like possession happen, but I do think the possibility of it exists. So, and that was my experience. So,
That's interesting, and something that's just occurred to me, and maybe it's occurred to Teresa too. We'll have to just confer on this. But that sound that you hear before a frightening experience may not be the signaling of a frightening experience so much as a warning that something's coming. So maybe it's a warning from one of your guardian angels or somebody who watches over you, like, hey, be prepared. Something's going on.
yeah,
Like, it's lucky you had the
I think
heads
so.
up for, yeah. It's like,
Yeah,
we
it's
can,
kind of giving a heads up. And
yeah, like an auditory clairvoyance. And you'll have to tell me what that is, Teresa, because I can't remember the name for that one. Off the top of my head, it slipped out. Oh, Archangel Gabriel, maybe. Yeah, with the horn. Yeah, you're right. So, yeah.
well, yeah, and but like biblically, there's lots of like the sound of a trumpet being mentioned, right?
Yeah.
So perhaps that's
And
my
that would
trumpet.
connect
I
to
don't
your,
know.
yeah, and maybe that would connect, doing it in a form that you can connect to, and maybe you can understand easier than anything else. So that's really cool. That's, yeah, bringing them from the back to your front. You would have had to dislocate your arms. Like, honestly, how the heck would you do that? I bet.
Yeah, and
What did the officer say when she saw that they were back in front? It must have been freaked her out. Like, how does that
they
happen?
just she jumped in. She was like, "What happened?" I'm like, "I don't know what happened. I can't explain it. Just help me resecure this person, please." After she tried to bite me and everything else. So
Oh, wow. That is scary. That's scarier than
yes,
walking into a
and when you
paranormal and being touched by a ghost.
yeah, when you deal with someone with multiple personalities, and that could have been just what it was, but from my experience, of almost 20 years as a paramedic as well, that's the only time I've ever come across something like that. So that could have just been that mental illness, but for me, it felt like something more. So, um, yeah, when they switch personalities and say different things that kind of trigger you, it's quite surreal. And in that moment, you're dealing with the crisis, and afterwards is when you think about it, and that's when it kind of becomes scary. Like, wow, I just did that. And that's all things to do with emergency medicine too. You go into some wild situations and you do what you're trained, and afterwards you're like, I can't believe I just did that. Or did I really just see what I saw? Like, that was insane. So
Cool. Can you tell us a little bit about your favorite equipment, and if we wanted to start our own girly ghost hunters? Sorry, Dana Newkirk. Yeah, like, so what for the budding paranormal investigator, what would be your go-to startup box of tricks or information things that you get the most information from the easiest?
for sure, I would say at least 90% of the evidence we capture is audio evidence. It's not all the stuff you see on on TV shows. The hospital. Yeah, they definitely.
Nancy's
There's
a
lots of
former nurse,
people
so yeah.
with
Altered
that,
state.
and I've dealt with people many times that are in those locked wards and transferring them out, and they know things are happening before they're even told these things. So, like, I had one person that knew they're being transferred to another facility, and hours before we came to transfer them, they had barricaded themselves, and it took many nurses to go in to sedate this person so that we could safely bring them out, and they still were very aggressive. So it's a if you're in healthcare, I definitely applaud everyone that works in that section of the hospitals and deals with mental health, because it can be very intimidating and scary at times. So
Yeah.
sorry, I went on a tangent there.
Sorry, no, and I know, no. So
Um,
your
so yeah,
equipment.
equipment. You were going on about equipment. So I would say a good audio recorder um, holds its weight in gold, because there's theories based on audio frequencies as well. Animals can hear a lot larger frequency bands than humans can. So a lot of times we'll hear things or won't hear things when we're asking questions. Then we review the audio later and you're like, we have a response. That's insane. A lot of the TV shows right now are using one specific recorder that's supposed to sense before audio is being recorded. It's been discontinued. It's been faulty. Otherwise, it'd still be mass producing it, right? And they're very expensive, like $5,000 to $8,000 to buy one.
Wow.
But you don't need one of those.
Will your
You can
iPhone
get a
work?
basic. We love it will, uh, but when you're using things like phones, they're designed to do many things in operations, right? I like to buy equipment that focuses on one function. So an audio recorder is built to record audio. It's not built to sense the temperature. It's not built to sense EMF. It only does that, and it does a very good job at doing that. So our team loves using Zoom recorders, the company Zoom, to the point where even live listening, where you're audio recording and listening to it at the same time to try and get that feedback immediately. We've heard like mice in walls of houses, and people are hearing we're hearing scratches in the walls. It's a spirit or a demon. Well, no, you have mice. Like, we can hear it with our recorder, because those recorders are a bit more expensive, so they're more sensitive. Um, you don't need it, but things that are more expensive, like an audio recorder, definitely hold their weight and can give clients a better idea if it's something supernatural or something explainable. Good audio recorder, I'd say number one. Number two, the biggest theory of paranormal industry is EMF and energy. So you need devices that can detect EMF. I like ones like there's a device called a MEL meter, and that actually gives you a number on the EMF spectrum. So, and how many milligauss it's spiking to, and you can compare it. So it's giving you a very factual number, as opposed to a K2 that just lights up a certain spectrum. You can't assign it a number. You can just say, oh, it's a red light, it's a yellow light. Like, right? So it's a lot more vague. When you're trying to prove evidence to people, the more direct and the more concise you are, the more compelling it is. So I like numbers, like things like a millimeter that gives you that, or a tri-field meter that can focus on those specific numbers, and that's what that device is for. It's not for doing 10 different things, it's for one thing. Um, and it does it really, really well. So I do audio recorder, an EMF detector. You don't need cameras. Obviously, the best evidence is visual to corroborate something that's physical, right? But also your own person. Like, we are designed almost to have that sixth sense, I believe. Like, you have that fight or flight response. Everybody has it naturally. And is that in tune with the paranormal world? You could suggest it can be, right? Because also you can't disqualify the human experience in investigating. That has to hold weight, because since the dawn of time, people have experienced things they can't explain. So there has to be some validity to that. Even though you can't put a number to it, there has to be validity to that. So a good example of that would be you're in a space trying to get an EVP. You're asking questions, all of a sudden you feel like you got touched, but then you're also in view of a camera that can see you jump when you're touched. Now you have three pieces of evidence that corroborate that event. You have the audio recording that might have captured a voice, you have that physical sensation of you being touched, and you have the camera capturing that moment. So anytime you can get two or more pieces of evidence corroborating as well, that evidence holds a lot more weight when you're trying to present it as evidence, as opposed to just something fun that happened, right? So TV
Have
shows,
you
you'll see
been
those
touched?
orbs fly into someone. Yes,
Oh
I
yeah,
have.
the orbs. Oh,
Like,
cool.
yeah, like orbs is the biggest kind of controversial thing, and every day we're getting pictures of orbs and videos of orbs, and orbs are fascinating. They've been proven to be bugs, dust, lots of different things, hairs. Um, when you're capturing these things, you have to also remember our technology has limitations. There's a thing called latency in cameras. So the camera will emit a light. That light has to reflect off an object and then get captured again by that device. So that's a latency. So there's a delay. And that's why you get these streaking orbs sometimes. It's a dust particle, but it looks streaking. Like, well, no, it's streaking. It can't be dust. It is, because there's that technological gap that people often throw out the window and don't consider when they're investigating things. So yes, and I love also still frame cameras. There's been lots of times where um, we've done paranormal photography and you don't capture anything, or you do capture something, and how do you prove that, right? How can you challenge that evidence? You can't. It is what it is, and in this day and age, it's so easy to doctor evidence and to edit things with our technology. So there's always that level of skepticism. But with paranormal photography, I always encourage people to do three quick shots of the same space in quick sequence. So a lot of times, or not a lot of times, but sometimes I would say you can actually capture stages of a manifestation too, which is super cool. So
Yeah.
each piece of evidence has its place. The basics would be audio and EMF, I would say.
Okay. And now your K2 meter, of course, we've all seen ghost hunters and how spirits respond intelligently by lighting up the lights. And, we've seen all sorts of programs like that where people will ask them to light up the lights and they light up the lights. Have you had that kind of response with your K2 meter, or do you use one?
Yeah, for sure. We use them on all of our tours that we run, because that's uh, probably the most basic piece of paranormal equipment, that you push a button, it does its own thing, right? And then the lights go off. The explanation is kind of the thing. Like, you're trying to garner an intelligent response by saying, okay, light it up to 3 for this, light it up to 2 for that. Just lighting it up at all doesn't mean it's intelligent unless it can respond to your parameters. Or you'll ask the spirit, show me what yes means, show me what no means. Then if you get reproducible responses, that perhaps you're dealing with a spirit or an intelligent spirit. So yeah, we've had the K2s. We have got responses with them for sure. We have, um, and lots of other devices. We have one of our newer pieces of evidence equipment, I should say, not evidence, is the Ovulus. I'm sure a lot of fans have heard
Oh,
of an Ovulus. It's controversial. I just like any theory, I like to test it to see if it does respond appropriately. But a lot of times we've been using it recently and it's saying just random words that don't coincide to anything to do with what we're doing or what we're asking. So it's fascinating. Maybe we're asking the wrong questions, or maybe the device doesn't always work the way we want it, right? Or
now the
um,
Ovilus, is that the
when
one
there's
that grabs the radio waves, like snatches, or am I thinking of a different
so yeah, the Ovilus is like a pre-programmed dictionary database in a device, and it
one?
can sense certain parameters in the environment, and they claim it those different senses relate to a specific word. So spirits can interact with the device and give you a specific word, and that will say that word out loud. So it can be kind of unnerving when it's saying murder and death and all these scary words around you, but that doesn't always um, coincide or relate to what that space is. There might not have been any murders there at all, and it's telling you all these big scary words, and you're getting all unnerved, but you can't validate that or challenge that against anything else or any other pieces of evidence. So once again, it's a very fascinating piece of equipment. It's interesting, but it's one of those things that you kind of have to take as is. I wouldn't put a lot of weight into it unless it's course or unless it's giving you evidence or words that back up your research you've done or the evidence you've already been capturing.
Um, Grant, thank you so much for being today. And if people want to get in touch with you, you have a website. It's quite cool, and you do respond to your emails, right? So maybe just let people know a little bit about that and how people can get in touch with you if you're in the
For
Southern
sure.
Ontario region, I guess.
Yes, if you're in, we did change our name to the Ontario Paranormal Society because we were doing cases that were a lot farther from us than we normally would do. So because we're getting a lot more claims and applications, that's why we changed our name to the Ontario. We used to be the Brantford Paranormal Society. So if you do want to reach out, or if you do have questions or having experiences that you want investigated, our website's ontarioparanormal.ca. Um, if you want to email us, it's info@ontarioparanormal.ca. We also have our social media feeds. We are on Facebook. If you respond or send a private message through our Facebook, you can usually someone will respond within the next hour to 4 hours because it goes directly to a few of our members. And then yes, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, all of those social platforms, and we can do our best to help out. Or if you want to see our upcoming events, we always list them on there too.
Thanks.
I think we
Can
lost
you?
Rhonda.
No, I'm back. I'm sorry. Grant, can you? Sorry, I'm having a little bit of an attack here. Can you tell us about your favorite song?
My favorite song, I'd say one of my favorite songs would be Blackbird by Alter Bridge. It's a very long song with fantastic guitar solos and just the lyrics behind it very speak to me. It's a very powerful song. It's very inspiring. Love that song. We've lost Rhonda again.
Yeah,
I
I
hope
don't
you're
know if
okay,
you can hear
Rhonda.
me, but the next question is, what do you work with any crystals or have any favorite crystals?
So we have several team members that love crystals and work with them constantly. I just recently more got into the idea of crystals myself. So the one crystal that I kind of resonates with me right now is this one right here. It's called shungite. And the idea behind Shungite is that
Love
that
it.
can actually help you with EMF. So we're talking about spirit energy as EMF or electricity. Uh, the idea behind Shungite is that it can help shield you or help that harmful EMF fields be uh, transformed into more biologic, less harmful, as opposed to electrical. So it's the primary, I believe, compound of it is carbon. So that's very, very interesting, and I find that fascinating.
I love shungite. Yeah. It actually clears water too, and it's pretty useful all in all. Our last question, if you guys can hear me, would be have in view of all that you do, all the neat investigations, have you come across any lights in the sky or UFOs and stuff like that as you go?
Yeah, so we've had many clients that have claimed UFO involvement or extraterrestrial involvement. And personally, I haven't had any UFO experience. I've not seen one in the field or um, had any interactions with them, but other than working with clients that have had experiences that they believe were extraterrestrial. So I believe there's potential, definitely a lot of potential for that to exist. But if people are in the field and they've seen the most recent Mexican reveal of their extraterrestrial bodies they discovered, it still gives me a lot of skepticism towards the topic since there's so many fabricated responses or evidence. But I believe it exists and I believe it can exist. And we're still waiting to get that solid evidence, I would say.
I like it.
Thanks, Grant. Sorry. Yeah,
Because
I'm sorry. I'm pretty much
a
done.
lot of times, like we channel, that doesn't. Go ahead, Rhonda. You're in.
No. I just wondered, like, yeah, thank you for
No.
that. That's an interesting perspective. And I know paranormal experiences often are thought to be alien experience and vice versa, right? That's a whole new theory.
Yes, for sure. The idea of multi dimensions and the thinning of veils between them, like perhaps these paranormal experiences or spirits are extraterrestrial, or perhaps they're just us in a different plane that's overlapping. So there's some of my favorite paranormal movies explore that idea. So I think it's definitely something that's we hopefully will find the answer to and can our continuation of that pursuit of paranormal evidence. So
Yeah, I know that.
I like
Sorry, guys.
I would love the
Well, go
idea of
ahead and close,
that's
and,
okay.
and thank
I
you.
love the idea. So
Sorry. Yeah. Anyways, since my operation, every once in a while I have a spasm in my back that just like, oh, takes my breath away. Sorry, I'm back. Um,
it's okay.
anyways, it's thank you, Teresa. I'm so glad. Teresa's been having problems with her
Awesome.
internet, but see, I'm so glad you could pop in and she would love to. We'd love to see you in person sometime. That would be cool. Maybe you can come and investigate the spooky sites in Eastern Ontario because there's lots of them here as well, and I'm sure there is in Tennessee too. Um, so we wish you all the luck with the rest of your season. What's your new next event coming up that we can help advertise for you here for people that are in Southwestern Ontario?
Our next event, I believe it's almost sold out, is at the Brantford Military Museum this weekend. It's a joint presentation through the Brantford Public Library. So on the Friday, like I said, I believe it's sold out, but we're doing a crash course on investigating what equipment does what and teaching people all about what we do. And then the following day, they get the opportunity, the people that attend that session get the opportunity to run and be involved in their own investigation of this military museum, which is quite active. We've actually caught, like, I guess people would claim Class A EVPs where you can hear them with the naked ear. We've captured silhouettes of people in spaces with our thermal cameras that aren't there. We've captured quite a bit of evidence there, and I love history. I love anything to do with that. So they have I believe they have a replica trench that they've made of World War One, what it would have been like during World War One in a trench. And one of our investigators was there and actually had someone whispering in her ear. So yeah, that's a super cool location and tons and tons of history. So the proceeds go to the military museum, and after that library section, the military museum has opened it up. So anyone that can't do that gets to do the same experience without that education background. We still give it to them on a tour, but they get that. And then at the end of the month, right before Halloween, we're at the Homer Watson Gallery in Kitchener. Like I mentioned before, that awesome history of spirituality and Canadian history. We've been there several years since COVID to fundraise for them, and we've always had activity. And for some reason, the spirits there love anyone to do with education and children as well. So if you're a teacher, come out and see if the spirits will talk to you.
Yeah, that sounds great, and it sort of sounds like that 28-day. The more you interact, the better the interactions you get. Like they go, oh, these people aren't trying to get rid of us, or they're not scary. They're trying to understand us. So they won't be so shy when you're around there. You must have a great energy for them to go with. So that's great. Thanks again so much for being with us. And thank you, Teresa. And we wish you well. And next week we have Marla Torres on. She's going to be talking about the eclipse and allergy healing and the energy that's involved with both, which sounds really interesting, and it sounds very convoluted. But as we know, with anything with energy, it's always convoluted and interesting. So we wish you well, and thanks for being on this week. And anything else you want to say before we leave, Teresa? If she hears me. We're going to get this sorted out. So please, if you have a solution for Teresa and her internet, get in touch with her. That would be wonderful. Thanks again, Grant, very much, and we'll be with you right after this.